Welcome to the Law Firm Growth Podcast, where we share the latest tips, tactics, and strategies for scaling your practice from the top experts in the world of growing law firms. Are you ready to take your practice to the next level? Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jan Roos, and I'm here with a podcast on one of my favorite months of the year, one of my favorite times of the year, and that is the holiday season. And I know that not everyone, well, actually, everyone's, who's not a fan of the holidays, honestly, let's get real. But from a business perspective, there's a lot of people that would consider this a slow season. But I've actually noticed that there is a minority of people who happen to be doing extremely well that think that this is one of the best months of the year. So it's kind of this interesting situation. You have two schools of thought. I'll get into this a little bit, but I want to just start off by saying the firms that we've worked with and just people I've met in business over my whole time doing this always love the end of the year. And it's kind of one of those contrarian things. You want to be kind of like the old Warren Buffett thing. Be greedy when others are fearful. Be fearful when other people are greedy. There is absolutely a case to say that no one's working in December. No one's making decisions on legal problems in December. I might as well just, book my flight to Florida or the Bahamas or whatever and not have to deal with that. And if you want to make your mind up that that's the truth, then you can find all the data in the world to support that. However, I want to present an alternative view if that's how you feel. That is that there is a better opportunity than ever to close in the months of December. And I have, reams of seven-figure businesses that we've worked with and coached and, been coached by that make huge numbers in December because they are believing an alternative view, which I want to explore in a little bit. So what I want to kind of talk about is the dynamics that lead to the end of the year being a fantastic time. And I want to start with, this is actually some experience from a partner that we work with that we do a ton of seminars with. Basically, these guys have been doing this since like the early 90s. And one of the data points that I found super interesting is that these guys get more business done in December. Those seminars outperform the seminars from any other month of the year, which is very kind of contrarian because a lot of people say, hey, there's no point in running seminars in December. Who's going to make it? Who's going to close? All the reasons in the world you can think about. But when we went into it, this is something that I've kind of known, our experience of this started around, basically when we were doing the AdWords stuff back in 2015. But we always noticed that people had really, really high conversion rates when it came to the ads that we had on. And this is across practice areas. But the reason why I think this is the case is super basic, high school economics. It comes down to supply and demand. So if you want to think about it, there are a lot of people, and I'll say this, I wouldn't say it's an outright norm in legal, but when you have practice areas, I'll use a state as an example where there are a lot of solos. I call those bottom heavy practice areas as opposed to, top heavy practice areas where there's, huge, white shoe law firms, that kind of thing, where there's huge businesses that kind of eat a lot of the market up. But practice areas like estate planning, practice areas in general, any Main Street law firm that's listening to this podcast, most likely, you have a lot of competition that are solos. Those solos, a lot of them that are referral based, especially, do not have a payroll to worry about. So if it comes to the decision to, shut the lights off for a month, the only thing they really have to worry about is themselves not making money. So a lot of people decide to take time off. And again, this might not necessarily be the entire month of December. It's nice for the people that can, but it could be taking, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever, out to a week or 2 weeks or whatever, right? So by and large, in the legal profession, there's a lot of people that run these kind of law firms that take time off. So what does that do to supply? The supply is down, which in and of itself is enough to give you more closing pressure for whoever happens to be in the market for whatever reason. And again, I'll continue with this example of estate planning. There is actually a higher demand for certain practice areas. I think estate planning is one of them for sure. But the thing is, when we talk about the holidays, you have so many hook points that make somebody want to move forward with a service or continue moving forward with a service that they had started earlier, somebody who went ghost for whatever reason, right? So you think about, again, we're coming right up after Thanksgiving right now. So many different reasons that you could want to revisit getting an estate plan. Hey, maybe grandma and grandpa are not looking so hot. Grandpa forgot, your girlfriend's name or whatever, right? And it looks like, you might need to be at home in the foreseeable future. Or, hey, look, Uncle John ended up losing a bunch of weight. He looks like if it's, he ends up breaking a hip, then this guy could have to get into a home. Those are the kind of things that get people to reach out to an attorney about elder care or respond to an ad that an attorney is putting out about elder care or webinar, you name it, right? On the flip side, let's think about the positive. Maybe your, grandchildren, nieces, nephews are looking all, sprightly, and you're reminded of the beauty of youth. And you start thinking to yourself, hey, you know what? I got to make sure that if anything were to happen to me, there's something left over to so these kids can go to college or make sure that they're financially set or whatever, right? So that's, more of a proactive reason to do it. The flip side, if somebody ended up dying during the year, it's probably going to come into the Thanksgiving, pre-speech or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you have a situation where you're thinking about death, you project that onto your own death. And now you're looking to avoid the situation with having probate go through for your family, right? So again, I'm just pulling these examples out of nowhere, but like these are all reasons that there's a lot, it's a very triggering time for a lot of these things. I'm just talking about estate planning right now, but family law. If you guys are family law attorneys, you know that the holidays are a very, very tense time if things are not really strong within a husband, wife, or, whatever kind of domestic arrangement people have. Sometimes child custody issues are going to flame out. And if you are snorkeling off of Bora Bora and your competition is not, then guess who's going to be able to take the call when that problem that exists and might even be more prevalent is going to be brought up and done the search on Google or social media or whatever happens to happen, right? So what I'm trying to say here, if you have the situation where there is a reduced supply, that in and of itself is a reason to be in the market. When you add an increased demand to that, then you have a cocktail for doing super, super well. So that's basically the premise where this is like the underpinnings for why December is huge. And again, as far as evidence, and talk to anyone who's doing seven figures in a seminar firm, if they're in the estate planning world, most of the people that are running seven-figure firms in general with just kind of your mainstream practice areas, I found a lot of agreement. I actually ended up putting my foot in my mouth on a webinar that I did with Allison Williams back in 2020 talking about this because I was trying to, say that this was some hot take. She was like, no, obviously December rocks. But anyways, if you know, that's kind of one of those situations. So the one thing I will say is that you do have to handle this a little bit differently. And I will give a little credence to the naysayers here. Some of the common peanut gallery responses that I'll get to this whenever we post on social media is, well, hey, no one has time to do this, or no one has the money to do this. You can't move forward with a legal problem in December. And it's, the truth is, if you're not a super strong closer, there's possibility that you heard this as you heard this as an objection, whether it was legitimate or not, we'll get into. But if you hear this once or twice and you're motivated to come up with a case for why you should be snorkeling in Bora Bora for December, then you can absolutely take that and run with it. But the truth is, there are some issues. So the biggest challenge that you have to deal with when it comes to closing business in December is the challenge of logistics. Again, I'll go to estate planning because it's something we do a lot of work with. Generally speaking, you have to have a consultation of some sort where you're going to close the client, and then typically a signing meeting at the very least when it comes to getting this stuff to you. And again, a lot of firms will have a 3-4 meeting process. Those meetings become a little bit harder to schedule when you consider your travel, clients' travel, that kind of thing. So the first thing that I want to say is that you want to get super clear on what absolutely needs to be in person, what can be done remote. Generally speaking, consultations, nice to have, not a must-have to have in person. Certain things like signings, contracts, that kind of stuff, that's kind of things that I would want to recommend having in person. But again, there are ways to do stuff with DocuSign, et cetera, that you can avoid that. But if that's the case, that actually opens things a lot, especially if you have family that lives far away from you. You actually could be snorkeling in Bora Bora as long as you have the ability to work the daylight hours in whatever time zone that you're in. That's not necessarily a problem. And again, as long as you have the situation that's not stopping you from closing, then you can absolutely close business as well. But basically, there's the situation of actually scheduling the consultation, which is tough. And then this is something you have to train your staff to do. And then there's basically the situation of closing the consultation can be a little challenge. The number one objection that we hear from our clients getting around this time of year, and it's actually something we get ourselves a case all the time, is, hey, this sounds awesome. Let's get back to this after Thanksgiving, after Christmas, after Hanukkah, after the new year, right? And the way to get around this is to preempt it and give people a reason to move forward. So I'll use an example as well. So if we know that that's coming, and this is just kind of to take a little bit of a side, if you ever have a situation where you get the same objection every single time, that's one of the greatest blessings you can think of, because then you just come up with a way to handle that objection and then you never have to deal with it again. But the way that we do it for this specific situation is we want to build in urgency to our offer. So when we get to the time, we say, all right, cool. Hey, you guys are all set. So I think if, this is a situation you need to get covered with the house and the kids and all this stuff too, this is the solution that you want. Yes. Okay, cool. Can we talk numbers? All right, great. So, hey, I know what you guys are probably thinking. This sounds awesome. Let's get started on this after the new year. So what we have right now is actually a quick action bonus. So normally I charge $6,500 for this, just because I want to make sure that you guys are getting the ball rolling in this. We can actually move it forward to $4,000. And then if you guys are ready to rock right now, we can go ahead and get that process started. And then by the time it comes to New Year's, you guys will actually already be way ahead on what you had. Does that sound good? What do you prefer? So to kind of break that down, what I did there a little bit, by the way, no one actually is discounting this stuff. We create a discount, right? So if you're charging $4,000, say you're charging $6,500 and offer it for blah, blah, blah. So now we have what we call internally a case field for our clients, a reason to act now. So do you want to get this process started today for $4,000, or do you want to do it on January 1st for $6,500? If we don't give a reason to not do things in January, then people are going to just say that, right? But now we've basically assigned a value to each of those decisions, and then we're almost presenting them the option for which they do. And legitimately, if you guys want to do this, the strength of using any sort of a close like this is going to come from how much you believe it. So if you have people that say, yeah, honestly, we're totally fine, we'll do that in January, charge them $6,500. I'm not kidding. And again, I'm just pulling these numbers out of a hat, but you get the idea. Like, you can legitimately do that to people, and then some people will actually do it. And then, hey, you might have just accidentally increased your prices without having to worry about it. But the truth is, when it comes to these logistics closes, we have to go for the kill on the consultation, especially with estate planning. But I will say this for any practice area, any service that you sell, period. The enemy of deals is, this sounds great, we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. Even if people have the most legitimate reason in the world, if you take a deal that is 100% the time that you end the call and wait a week, those numbers start dropping pretty legitimately. It has nothing to do with your service, it has nothing to do with the prospect's intent. It just has everything to do with human nature and the fact that people like to put off things that are important, right? So we have to go for it. But again, if you know what's coming, which is, this sounds great, let's get to in the new year, you address it ahead of time. And then basically you're able to eliminate that objection. And you'll actually be surprised. I would say there's more money to be made in having the consultations that you think no one wants to sign up for in December than to address the percentage of people who are going to throw out some sort of a logistics objection when you actually close it. When people want something, they want something. And if you're the person to deliver it, it really is less of a matter of time in terms of just like, it has more to do with logistics and when you actually get that, right? But that being said, if you are able to address the downside of closing during the holidays, which is working around logistics and calendaring and that kind of thing, then you are able to capture the upside, which is a lot of demand for the services, especially some of the ones that we mentioned, and a lot less competition. If you guys are worried about people getting shopped out and the situation where your competition is, whatever, undercutting you on price or whatever, get cracking while those guys are asleep. I swear to God, it is one of the biggest levers that we've seen. And again, once you go to this, you're not going to want to come back. And, if you guys want to take your vacations, just don't do it during the holidays. Just do it when everyone else is hustling. I think honestly, the flip side of this is sometimes it makes more sense to take vacations when other people are, let them duke it out. But again, or, keep your foot on the gas the whole year or keep your foot on the gas until you can hire other people to keep their foot on the gas. But anyways, I'm losing steam. You guys know how it is. So, guys, have an awesome December. I hope you guys crush it. If you have any questions, sign up to our email list. We got some more content going out there these days. But I will see the rest of you guys next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern on the Law Firm Growth Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Growth Podcast. For show notes, free resources, and more, head on over to casefuel.com/podcast. Looking forward to catching up on the next episode.